This video we're going to look at Python, and we're going to have a look at these inferring data types. In the last video I mentioned inferring. I didn't really tell you what inferring meant. I was hoping that you would know, but maybe you don't. Inferring means really guessing the data type. So it's guessing that is an integer, guessing it's a string, guessing it's a character. So I just want to nip over to Python now. Some of you've got Python downloaded onto your computers. That's absolutely brilliant, and you should use that. Some of you may not have the permission to download Python. You might be on your phones. I don't even know if this is going to work on your phone. But there is an online version of Python. I'm going to take you to that now. So this is it at tutorialspoint.com, and I will leave this address in Show My Homework so that you can get this online. Luckily it's Python version 2.7, which is exactly what we're needing. You can change it to Python 3, which we shan't bother with. On the left hand side is the program where you write your code, your commands, and on the right hand side we've got kind of the output window, the shell, but we can't use this one as the shell, so we have to actually write programs. And I'm going to show you in both Python online and in Python itself. So I'm going to get the shell up, which is what I want. I'm going to look at data types. So I'm going to concentrate on the shell first. And Python can tell you what the data type is. I'm not going to write a program, I'm just going to issue commands. And you'll see me write the programs when we go to this version here. So first of all, I'm going to set a equal to 3. And if I want to know what data type that is, all I need to do is issue type, and then in brackets what the variable is that I want to know what the type is. So if I press enter now, it's telling me that that type is integer. If I change my variable a, I'm now going to do 3.0, and I'm going to find out what type that is. So if I do type a again, press enter, it now tells me it's of type float. If I do a equals a c to try and get a character, now remember I told you there's no such thing as a character in Python, and if I just prove that by doing type of a, it should tell me that the type is string, not character. There is no such thing as character. So there's no distinction between a equals c, and notice I use the single quotes there for character, and I'm going to use the double quotes for a string. So if I now have a look at that type of a, it is a string. So there's no distinguishing features between a character and a string in Python. Also, it's called a float in Python. It's not called a real or decimal. The next one I want to look at is a Boolean. A equals true, and it has to be a capital. Notice it's gone purple. If I use a lowercase t, it will stay black, and that's not a variable, that's a mistake. So capital T for true. If I press enter, I get type of a is bool, standing for Boolean. Now remember that I said that you could have 1 to be to represent a Boolean, 1 or 0, and if I find out what type that is, type a, press enter, it tells me it's an integer. However, I'm going to prove to you now that it also thinks it's a Boolean. So if I type here true is equal to 1, and we will come to this comparison operator a little bit later, not too far in the distant future. So true is equal to 1. If I press enter, it says it's true. True is equal to 0, it will say false. If I say false is equal to 1, it will say false. If I say false is equal to 0, it says it's true. So false is 0, true is 1. But if I tried to work out what the type was, type of A, because at the moment A is equal to 1, it will tell me it's an integer, not a Boolean. I hope that has made some sense to you. It can be rather confusing. We would never ever use this really in a program at all. This is just for our purposes to try and figure out what type we've got before we actually start coding. I have never seen it applied ever in a program, not a simple program anyway. So I'm going to nip over to this one. If you've seen this, maybe you want to try that yourself in Python on your own computer. I'm just going to do the same kind of thing here. I'm going to set A equal to 3, but I can't just, as I did over here in the shell, do type A on the next line and get the result. It's a program, so I have to literally code it and then run the program. And to run the program, I just press execute. Oh, incidentally, when you first start this up, you'll have probably a little program here. Just delete it. In fact, you don't even need that very first line. I could delete that and move that up. That's fine. And to run the program, we call this one execute. So if I press execute, it will run. Yep. What I didn't do was say print it. There we go. The type is integer. So if I now change that 3 to 3.0, execute the program, type is float. If I now change that to a single character, C, using single quote marks, that's a bit weird. I don't think my keyboard is quite set up for this. I've got an American keyboard running on a Mac, and we can see that here. And sometimes some of the characters don't print out nicely. And that looks like it's the wrong C. There we go. Sorry about that. And if I execute that, it says that the type is string, not a character. So it does not distinguish between double quotes, and the double quote hasn't printed. It seems to only print when I kind of move away from it. How weird. There we go. If I press execute now, that tells me it's a string, so I could do Chris, and that is still going to tell me it's of type string. The other one that I was looking at was the Boolean. So if I type true with a capital T, execute that, tells me it's of type Boolean. Again, if I did the 1 and execute that, it would say type int, even though we're trying to make it a Boolean. So let's check that one out. So print true is equal to 1. So let's get rid of that first line. We don't need that anymore. Execute my program. True. True is equal to 0. Execute. False. Let's change this over to false. So false, or flays. False is equal to 0. True. False is equal to 1 is false. And although I didn't explain it earlier on, it doesn't really matter. I'm only looking at 1s and 0s. It's never going to play around with numbers that are larger. It's always going to return false if I'm using anything other than 1s and 0s. Okay, so there we go. That's our simple data types. We've looked at all of these and we've checked them out in Python. Python knows what kind of data types they are. We just need to be a little bit careful in our programming when use them in particular places. And I will teach you that as we go along.